Yeah, well, okay, then let's get started slowly. So sharing my screen. So then welcome everyone. It's been some time since the last meeting, May 25th. Good, let's go over the items from that meeting. Cloud configs of Bosch deployment project are outdated. Yeah, I simply opened an issue and yeah, Bayhan promised to review VM and disk types, but I think not much more has happened since then. Here's something. Yeah, okay. This looks actually good. Okay. Just haven't checked if this made it into Bubble, but I guess in one of the next Bubble releases, we should have that. Okay, Bubble AWS DNS setup. I think that one was simply accepted and merged. So that fixed the AWS Route 53 configuration and yeah, well, works for our experimental environment. All fine. Plan patch for DNS parent zone wiring. I opened no, that's not it. Opened another pull request for Bubble here. It was also merged, and I think we are already using it as it is. So it's yeah, quite simple. You specify your parent zone ID, and then the DNS servers are automatically configured. Works fine. GCS buckets for the update releases pipeline. Try to migrate with GCP tooling. I think this is done, right?
Yeah, Dave and I did this.
Great, fantastic. So if we have not yet forgotten any other resources, then the migration should now be really done after a year or so. Okay, good. Bug in the branch protection rules.
This is fixed.
No problems here. This is all green. Okay, fine, good. Then let's go over the today's items. Yeah, first of all, the support for CF Linux FS4. I think we can now close the big parent issue, because with the latest CF deployment release, we have removed all leftovers of CF Linux FS3 and the Bionic stem cell. So there is nothing more to do. I think so. Let me close. Write something here. Details out. Maybe a quick link to the release. Released with, so close with comment. Okay. And then now finally we can close this issue, unless there are any final last minute objections. I guess not. All done. Closing. Thanks to everyone who contributed. Good. Fantastic.
All done. That was a long one.
That's so difficult.
So let's open integration of CF Linux FS5.
Let's continue with FS5, yes.
Get it started now. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, as soon as we are running out of ideas or work, we can continue with FS5. Yeah, good, perfect. But before a few other issues, what is this? Okay, yeah, that's done. CATS tests. There is this one particular test which really fails very often, and Carson used this Zipkin test.
Yeah,
and
this one's annoying.
Investigate. It's really annoying because this one is really failing very often.
We don't have the app is the worst part. So like we have a zip, we have like a tar of we have a jar file, sorry. And as far as I can tell, the jar file was built out of a repo that no longer exists. So there's no way to look at what this app actually does and why it might be failing and then update it.
Okay.
So I think there's a couple different approaches that I've thought about and haven't, one is to try and use some kind of like jar unpacker, which there exists some tools. I think someone told me the legality of them is a little questionable, but it's like, this is I didn't really get the point. It's like, this is our jar. I don't know how there's a legality issue of us unpacking the jar. But we could unpack the jar and try and like figure out what's in it. We could trace back all the things we actually care about, the things we actually use this app for, and just build a new app. Or we could try and find, like, this app is based off of, as far as we can tell, it's probably just a simple example app for Spring Sleuth. Now, one problem is that Spring Sleuth itself is deprecated. But if we could find a new example app for the new like Zipkin library, then we could probably just use that with like a 1 or 2 changes and be good. But I haven't been able to find an easy example app for the new Zipkin library, which I think is Micrometer. But if y'all have better ideas, please lay it on me. I traced through a bunch of old tracker stories to like figure out why there's no repo anymore. But that's kind of where we're at. It's 7 years old. I think it might just be not a good app to be using anymore.
Yeah, we have indeed a few assets here where it's a bit unclear how they were produced. I have no more context here. I thought this was some timeout setting stuff. Okay.
It might be timeout setting stuff, but as far as I can tell, it's pushing the app that's failing, and then the app just intermittently like fails to push, was what I've been seeing in the errors. The issue has an example of it if you expand the thing. I tried to be clever and use that like little app report thing at the bottom to create like a fold out little bit. Yeah.
Timed off after 1 minute for readiness check. Yeah, Spring apps may take a bit longer until they're ready.
We could increase the timeout and see if that fixes it. But we didn't touch those timeouts, right? So I figured it was something that was changing over time, like something about the Java build packs interactions with this thing that was changing it. But yeah, it could just be as simple as changing the build pack. Although there is a larger problem of this thing is 7 years old and it's going to break us eventually. But if we can fix the flakiness with a simple change, maybe we should. There was that, and there was the CredHub service broker. And I think I fixed the CredHub service broker because that was just a Go app. But this one, this one's harder.
Hey, if it can be fixed with a timeout, would be good enough maybe, but of course, midterm, we need to know how to rebuild this app and update everything. Yeah, we have a few more assets where it's unclear. So I think I also created some binary, checked it in, but with a comment how to reproduce that. Yes. Okay, good. Yeah. So if you have time, then please try to continue or investigate further, because this is really often blocking the.
I know it fails so often in the pipeline.
Yeah.
I mean,
okay.
if nothing helps, we can also disable the single test, right? Maybe there's a flag for it. And then, build it up from scratch, basically. I mean,
this test is also weird because there's no mention of like Zipkin stuff in the doc, or like not much of a mention of Zipkin stuff in the docs. This is like the only example of Zipkin stuff in CFD. I don't know why it has a specific test either.
Is a good question, yeah. Why this is so log lines.
But there is some functionality in the Go rotor regarding these Zipkin headers. And I remember that we also did some adoptions in the cloud controller to have the headers everywhere. So it more or less checks that.
Yeah, it checks
that. I think the weird thing to me is that I'm pretty sure these are more generic, like trace ID headers that multiple different libraries could theoretically read and use. And we call it the Zipkin feature. And maybe because Zipkin was like the main library at the time, but I don't think this has to be Zipkin specific.
But these B3, if I remember, there are two standards and they of course use different headers. So do not
maybe
make it so easy.
Zipkin specific.
Yeah, I think these are known as Zipkin headers, this B3 stuff. Yeah, this is an unfortunate situation.
Okay, good. Yeah. So if we can fix the test with a timeout or so, would be good enough for now. I mean, disabling it, so not really good. Maybe I will also check a bit what is documented, which features are really supported, and we adopted our log parsing rules as SAP internally to make sure that these headers are set. Yes. Okay, good. Then I will check the documentation and Good. CAT's release process. So after quite some time, I created a new CAT's release, which also removes CF Linux FS3 support. That is, as a stack, you can only specify CF Linux FS4 now, which is also the default. I just had a little bit trouble to create the release because there is, or is there a documentation how to create a CAT's release?
No.
It's
I just follow a similar flow to the CFD release usually.
Yeah.
Like look at the commits to determine whether this is a major or minor, and then cut the release, and then create the or by cut the release I mean run the release, the corresponding release job, and then create the release in GitHub. Was there any other steps you took out of curiosity?
No, but it took me a while to figure out how to create the release notes until I found the button again in GitHub. This nice feature. Draft is safe, right?
Sure.
draft,
Yeah,
and he generate release notes. So that's the main difference. We don't have a Concourse job doing this. We are using the GitHub feature and then adapting the nodes a little bit. Okay, could you write a few, or maybe start a very simple wiki page and just write a few lines how this can be done, so that everyone knows where to find the instructions? And okay, that would be great.
Yep, can do.
Thanks. Really just the essentials. So no, yeah, because so that everyone is able to create a release. Okay. What else do we have? We have a small improvement for our GCP test landscapes. That is not what I wanted to show. Then let's take the screenshot. So when we deploy something to GCP, with Bubble contains Bosch deployment as submodule, and Bosch deployment GCP cloud config specifies use external ephemeral IPs true as default. That means that each VM, so this is a Cloud Foundry deployment, gets an external IP to enable outgoing traffic. And this is, of course, not really recommended setup, in particular because sometimes orphaned external IPs are left behind, and these cost more than ones that are attached to a VM. So I created this small pull request to allow Bubble to create a NAT gateway in GCP. This feature was likely introduced later. And so historically, we were using external IP addresses. And tested it. It works. So if you switch off external IPs in Cloud Config, deploy again so that you only have internal IPs, add the NAT gateway with like this here, and then outgoing traffic works again. So I guess this should be the preferred setup. It's the same on AWS. I think I discussed this with Raymond, and he requested a review, so that hopefully this will come with one of the new Bubble releases, and then we can save a little bit of cost.
I'm not quite sure I understand this change. Is it I get that not every VM needs an external IP. That makes sense to me. We want to cost save. I would have thought then that we just take the external IP off of several gateways and have them only do internal traffic. But what is the NATS gateway part of it? Why do we need that?
Some Cloud Foundry VMs need access to the internet, for example, to download build packs. The Diego cells must be able to download build packs. And this is, if you remove the external IPs, this does not work. I've tested. And that's why they need a NAT gateway, so that they can use the gateway to access for outgoing traffic. This is the standard setup.
Okay.
Which we also have on AWS.
Interesting. So it removes all the external IPs and then adds this new VM or tool called a NAT gateway.
A gateway which is connected to this subnet.
Cool.
10.0.0.16 something. Oh, wait, I can show you here.
And that gateway basically serves as a bridge between the internal subnet and external internets.
There is just none because I only had it in the dev Maxim environment. Yes, exactly. This is
Okay,
then
cool.
here. So here you in CloudNut, you would find one more gateway plus one more router. That's how it's done in GCP. And the gateway or the router has exactly one external IP, and this is for outgoing traffic. I guess
Okay.
this should be the preferred setup, because if you check IP addresses, then you see quite a lot of external IPs.
Yeah.
Okay, these are from CF deployment 630. Oh, no, sorry. External 332. And if you check in use by, well, I cleaned this up already, but there are always a few that are orphaned and likely just costing money.
Sweet. Good catch. Thank you.
Yeah, I noticed this earlier, but didn't have time to investigate and then discuss this with Raymond, and yeah. Yeah, good. Stefan, you looked a bit concerned, or?
No, I am.
Oh, okay.
I think that's all fine.
Yes.
Right, I'm not deep enough in the GCP internals here to seriously discuss.
That historically there was no NAT gateway, or...
Yeah. That's actually, I remember we had for our GCP landscapes some manual crafted VMs that worked like a NAT gateway, and then they got replaced.
Yeah, right. We had also some workarounds which were quite odd. Yeah. Okay, good. So this will then hopefully come in a new bubble release, and then we still have, first we need a new bubble release with NAT gateway, and then we can, I should not forget this, here the Bosch deployment needs to be updated. So here, just for information, Bosch deployment, cloud config. And here we have this ephemeral external IP true setting, which automatically assigns external IPs to every VM. Okay, good. And then what is this? That one is really, I started this small pull request here to print error information. So just again for the context, when we do a update release job to update a single Bosch release, we bubble up, deploy Cloud Foundry, and then run this ensure API healthy job, which just checks that the cloud controller is properly responding. Now, if it is not responding, there is not much useful information here, because neither the HTTP status code nor the response body is printed. So you don't know why your CF deployment is not working. And I proposed this little change here just to print this information. And it's evolved into a very lively technical discussion how to correctly handle defer function, deferred closes in Go with many proposals how this could be done and not. So this is already some weeks old. The latest proposal was something with anonymous function and the close inside, so that the HTTP stream is really closed, but there were quite a lot of other suggestions how to solve this. So yeah, I don't know. Carsten, would you want to do a final review with Dave if this now needs a change or not?
Yeah.
I mean, if this error is printed, then it's anyway game over. The container in course will be closed with any open file handles whatsoever, and the Cloud Foundry deployment will be destroyed. So, yeah.
Yeah, I will try and get in a room with Dave and sort out what we think about this one. Sorry, we seem to be like going to multiple different directions with how to close this response body.
Yes, it is a bit tricky, but in that context, I guess it doesn't matter much. Yeah, it's just we had one time it occurred that deploy CF is successful, but the API was not healthy, and you can't find out why. So if this happens more often, this extra information would be very helpful. Okay, that would be all from my side. Any topics from your side?
Just maybe just a heads up. It's not immediate, but in the TOC round, there's a discussion on RFC regarding new stacks for the cloud native build packs. And if that is accepted, then I guess we get involved into adding the stacks. So the idea was here to have the 3 flavors of the cloud native Gemmy stack delivered, so that the cloud native build pack idea can somehow be added to CF deployment. Of course, as an experimental ops file, etc. first. And let's see how that works out. But it's still under heavy discussion if that is the right way or something else should be done.
Okay. So we would, I mean, creating an experimental ops file is not a problem. How far, to what extent should we validate and test this?
That's a good question. It can only be validated using the cloud native build packs. There's also a discussion whether we could offer the cloud native build packs also on CF Linux FS4. That would make it easier also for users, because those stacks then need to be delivered. But the additional stacks, there are at least also a few stripped down stacks which have much less packages and are then more secure, etc. But that can be then left to the operator. If we add them, we would need a validation. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah.
Somehow, but that's still still under discussion.
Test suite and a suitable environment. So, okay, good.
I think it will be like build pack tests that you can push a hello world, use the stack and this native build pack, and that should work. Yeah. And maybe it's also enough to use the smallest one, because the bigger ones just offer additional packages. But as I said, I guess the cloud native build pack team will come up with proposals what makes sense to test, and maybe we don't need the full matrix. It's a bit too much.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the big question for me. Do we need an additional validation scenario or not?
We can bring in this question into this RFC.
Yes, I mean, we have a scenario where we test experimental ops files, but of course, all on the default stack.
Yeah.
So I think this would be quite some effort if you want to run this all on a new stack. Okay. Yeah, good. So Stefan, to find out if we need a new value. So as of now, the answer is no.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But
yep, I bring it into the discussion.
if this becomes serious, then we of course should support this.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Yeah, just saw that there is a big bunch of Windows updates coming in. Okay, nice. Good to know that there's also a lot of development going on. Okay, good. Yeah. Anything else?
No.
Okay, good. Then we are done for today. Thanks for attending and have a nice evening or a nice day.
Yep.
You too.
And see you in 2 weeks.
Bye.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.